Hi, I'm Lionel, and welcome to the Threecolts podcast, where we share the latest insights, trends, and strategies on how to thrive in the e-commerce world. Today, we're going to be deep diving into a very important topic. But first, let me introduce you to our head of insights, Ahmed Sanda.
Hi, I'm Ahmed Sanda, the head of insights at Threecolts. And in this episode, we're going to be discussing how to write a winning title for your Amazon listing.
So, Ahmed, according to your findings in your latest report, what are the key insights that constitute an amazing Amazon title or the best-selling Amazon titles?
That's a really good question. For the purposes of this report, we focus on three major elements of an Amazon title. We focus on sentiment, which is what type of emotion the words in a title make a user feel. We focused on readability, how easy it is to scan the text and be able to draw out key points of information. And finally, we focused on keywords. As we all know, keywords are a major element of search engine optimization, and they're a major factor into ensuring that your products get the visibility they need in searches. And so those are the three elements we focused on in this report.
So keywords are something that come up a lot, but what are the most frequently used keywords in the top selling categories, and which ones did you see come up a lot?
And I think on the topic of keywords, it's obviously category dependent, right? So if you're, for example, selling products in, say, cell phones and accessories, some of the most frequently occurring keywords are iPhone 15 because of the year and iPhone 15s are coming out. We see things like charger, protector, highlighting the key accessories that people want in these different categories. But I think what's more interesting is that it's not just the keywords in the title that determine how good that title is, but also how those keywords are connected and sort of the order of the keywords and how they all appear generally within the first half of a title.
So as a seller, I don't just sprinkle the first great 5 keywords in a random order and expect that I'm just going to make sales. That's not how it works?
Definitely not. I think a lot of times the audience is the consumer audience is a lot more perceptive in terms of finding products that they want. So I think the function of keywords is to make your product visible, right? And ensure that users who are looking for the products that you sell are able to find it. I think from that point on, it's the quality of the entire listing. So there's bullet points, there's A+ contents, there's the images. There's a lot of factors that go into a consumer's purchase choice, but it is really important to understand that the title is generally the first point of contact with the consumer. And so being able to capture their attention from the title goes a long way towards conversions.
So when we're speaking about crafting titles again, we go into being able to get those keywords out there and then focus on the readability as well and the SEO. SEO is king right now.
Right.
I guess it's always been. So how do you factor those? How do you factor that in as well, making sure that the SEO and readability is still on point while putting in those keywords?
Yeah, and I think this is the challenge for most sellers, right? Being able to balance having a eye-catching and readable title versus having a title that is very SEO friendly and shows up quickly in searches. And I think depending on products, you have to adjust to sort of your consumer and audience needs. So I think, for example, if we're looking at categories like handmade products, right, where users are generally or consumers are generally looking for a more tactile sort of feel to the products. In that case, it may be in your benefit to lean towards readability. But in general, what we do see is that SEO is king, right? Ensuring that your product shows up on searches is generally the most important factor in conversion. And I think readability is generally secondary to that, but it still helps present a well-crafted, well-thought-out title. And I think it also represents a lot about the seller's brand in terms of how they're able to craft these products.
So another thing that really stood out to me is sentiment. That's the last thing I expected to see when I was reading this report. Now, how does sentiment fit into crafting those titles that draw in the customers?
Yeah, so this was a pretty interesting finding on our part as well. And I think a lot of times, right, when we are engaging with content, right, words make us humans feel something. And I think it's important to understand that those initial feelings may actually have an effect on how how the audience perceives the product. And so
Okay.
in most cases, I think you want to ensure that your product has it grants this positive feeling, and that the product that they're selling is going to make their lives easier. It's going to make their lives more convenient. And I think that's an important factor in this.
So when we're talking about sentiments and we're talking about those words that make people actually feel something, are there certain words that stick out? Is this something that you found that certain words keep popping up frequently?
Yeah, definitely. So a couple examples of words that we found that produce a more positive sentiment, for example, are like warm, entertainment, guarantee. You know, people like the feeling of trust and sort of a fiduciary sort of engagement. Friendly, clear, powerful. Versus some of the more negative sentiment words tend to be like alarm, drop, hard, anti, block. However, I think it's worth noting that in conducting sentiment analysis, we are using machine learning tools. And part of the limitations of machine learning tools is that they're not humans, right? So they can't necessarily always process context in the same way. And so, for example, in some cases where you're looking at like home improvement, right, there'd be an item, let's say, for example, like a no nail painting hanger. No in a machine learning context is thought of as negative, but like in this context, right, when you're looking at the entire title, a no nail hanging product is actually a positive for the audience member. And so I think these are some of the elements that we have to consider when crafting titles as well. But in general, because SEO is a machine driven sort of process, it tends to be better to lean away from negative sentiment words. And so rather than having words like bad uh, or like low, you can use words. So, for example, like convenient. So rather than, I guess, like no nail hanging um, painting hanger, you can go something like convenient painting hanger. Um, and I think it's an art and a science, right? Because we're both playing the algorithm in terms of like
Yeah.
search engine optimization, but we need to make sure that there's a human element because we are selling to people.
It's interesting because it goes beyond just putting words that like happy. You're saying that it's warm. It seems to be very product specific. So I guess it's finding those emotive words within your category that would you say that that's what really makes a difference?
I All right. Um, So yeah, I think with sales, right, or selling products on Amazon, etc., I think there's both the scientific and the human element to it. And I think the science is getting people to your page, right? And I think that's what a lot of the title listing does. I think the human element is actually conversion into sales, and I think that's where elements like sentiment and readability come into play. So you've got someone on your page. Does the product provide for the needs of the consumer? And is it doing what the consumer wants, how the consumer wants it? So I think that's the balance we sort of have to strike between getting people to our page and ensuring that there's enough information on there that provides the details that consumers are looking for.
So how would you put this all together and how would you conclude and say what do you want people to walk away with when it comes to creating and crafting their titles for e-commerce?
Um, Yeah, I think the key findings from our research are threefold. First, you want to ensure that your titles tend to evoke positive emotion, as positive emotions generally leads to greater consumer interest and thus then conversions. Uh, Second, sellers have to balance readability and search engine optimization. Generally, search engine optimization wins out because it's a lot more beneficial to be found than it is to have a good title and not be found. And so, for that reason, we would advise that most sellers lean into search engine optimization and ensure that their keywords are easily searchable, findable, and they do a good job of describing what the product is. The third finding we found out is that the best Amazon listings make use of highly connected keywords. And so one of the interesting things that we found is that the top 7 most frequent keywords in a given category for top sellers generally tend to appear within the first 10 words. And on average, an Amazon title is about 16 words long. So you want to make sure that your keywords are descriptive and they appear within the first half of your title.
So moving forward, we obviously want to get some insights into what your next report is going to be. And just before that, let people know where they can find you.
So next report that I'm currently working on is what are some of the tips for seasonal sellers and what are the best strategies to sell seasonal products. So what sort of timings should we be looking at, and sort of what does the seasonal market look like in general throughout the course of the year? And you can find me on LinkedIn at Ahmed-Sanda. And also you can check out my work at threecolts.com/blog. And if you click the drop down, there's a little insight section, and that would have all the published reports that I have. And please definitely check out our blog section and reach out to me if you have questions. I'd love to engage more with the audience and figure out what's on your mind and what are some of the challenges you're facing.
Thank you so much for joining us, Ahmed. This was really useful, and we look forward to seeing more of you on the Threecolts podcast. Thanks for watching.